Linda, welcome back.
Welcome back, Sam. How's it going?
So far, so good.
Awesome. We've got our guest today, Susan Tatem. She is a medical professional. She does physical therapy. She's also a mom with a daughter who has autism. And we wanted to hear from Susan today how she finds a way to keep all of that in harmony in her life. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So, we call it balancing act tongue in cheek because we're not, we talk more about the harmony because balancing means something has to give, and in most cases,
Right.
something can't, right? you gotta keep going, right? So,
Something always finds a way to become priority number one.
right. So as you were raising your daughter, I guess give us a little bit of your story. Tell us about you and your daughter and your journey so far.
Sure, of course. Well, I raised my daughter by myself since she was 8 months old, and I was a single mom until she was about 21, and then I met my husband. But basically, I I dedicated myself to raising her because I figured I only get one chance and I want to do it right. She deserves my full attention. And I knew that there was something going on with her right around the age of 2 because of being in healthcare and knowing, normal development and things. And so she was diagnosed with developmental delay. And that's kind of what we went with up until she was actually about age 10. And I first heard the word Asperger's from a friend of mine because her daughter, who is similar to my daughter, was seeing a developmental pediatrician who was kind of tossing that word around, and I had never heard it before. And I went, what the world is that? So I started digging in, trying to do research. And all the research said, oh, well, it looks different in girls, but nothing ever said, what exactly does it look like in girls? So it was kind of a growing and learning experience. And it was kind of one of those aha moments you have in life where once you kind of dig in and get the information, you go, oh my goodness, that is completely what's going on here. And that really changed the game. And I could really start to understand her better and really help her more. I actually ended up pulling her out of public school in the middle of third grade. I homeschooled her for 7 years as a single parent, working full time. So it was quite a challenge, but you do what you have to do. You make things work. You make time for what's important to you.
Most definitely, and family is always the number one, right?
Right. Did you find that the public school system was ill-equipped to handle your daughter?
Absolutely, 100%, 100%. It When I pulled her out in the middle of third grade, I had her privately tested by an official tester, and she was on a first grade math level. She could not add or subtract, and they were expecting her to do the third grade SOL testing, which has multiplication and division on it. And there was absolutely no way she could do that because she has multiple learning disabilities on top of everything else. I begged for them to repeat second grade. They wouldn't do it. She was crying under her desk every day for a large portion of the day. And they said there was nothing wrong with her, nothing's going on with her. It's all behavioral. She's just doing it to get attention because of her behavior and things like that. And it was just devastating her. She felt so, she would call herself stupid and she just felt so defeated and so brought down. And I couldn't even use grades for the first probably 2 years that I homeschooled her because she had so much anxiety about getting a grade.
Absolutely.
So I just had, we did a check mark or a circle. That was it. And I told her when I would give her a test, I said, this is not about you. This is about me. This is to tell me if I'm doing a good job teaching you this stuff or not. And it took a long, long time, but she finally started getting some confidence. And the nice thing about homeschooling was that I was able to change the curriculum to fit her. I didn't have to try to shove the, square peg into the round hole to make her try and fit the curriculum. And it was
Yeah.
game changing.
Right, right. So I ask this anytime I visit with folks who have an autistic child or someone with Asperger's in their family. One of the things that my niece said to me one day was that, Uncle Sam, my skin feels tight,
Mhm.
just not comfortable, all the way around. I mean, we lived in Wyoming at the time. And I don't know if y'all remember, they used to call them jelly shoes. They were just really thin pieces of, right? You know what I'm talking about. In
I
the
do.
middle, in the middle of winter in Wyoming, she's wearing these things out in the snow.
Yep.
And and so but I believe that the public school system is ill-equipped. Their biggest issue with my niece was it's behavioral. It's all
Mhm.
behavior. It's all behavior. It's all behavior. And we went to a couple different places.
Mhm.
Um, and it wasn't until we actually put our foot down with the school district in the town she was living with at the time and
Right.
said, this is what you're going to do.
Yes.
And we had to get an attorney involved and everything else.
Yes.
And we found a school actually in Texas that
Okay.
would take her, and 180. I mean, we're talking flip the script.
Right. And the thing as parents is we always feel that, well, the school knows what they're doing. They're going to do what's best for my child. They have her best interest at heart. Nope.
Yeah.
You, as the parent, have all the power and authority to steer and drive the IEPs, the education.
Mhm.
And, when I would go to the meetings, they would hand you a paper pack. I don't know if they still do that now, but with your rights in it. And, I never really read it. I just thought, oh, okay. But when it came time to put her back into public school when she was 15, I I I was not going to have them, you know, bulldoze her again. So
Right.
I showed up with two autism advocates. I had what was called the Pele Clinic, which here at William and Mary College over in Williamsburg in Virginia, they have in their law school program, they actually have where the students can come and represent your child's legal right with the supervision of their law professor. And so, I kind of showed up with my, posse, so to speak. And they tried to bulldoze and bully, and I just finally said, you can't do anything without my signature on this piece of paper.
Right.
And until it says what I want it to say, I will not sign it.
Right.
And once they know you mean business, then they start to kind of sit up a little taller and
Right.
pay a little
Right.
more attention and things. But you have to advocate. That is the huge, huge, huge thing. And one thing I like to focus on too is not just getting them through school. We have to start early to planning for what comes next. Because a lot of times kids will graduate and then, well, what now? What's
What
next?
now?
There's this
Right.
huge abyss and hole that these people sink into in our society where there's just nothing.
Yeah.
There are things out there, but you have to plan ahead. You have to do your homework. You have to research.
Mhm.
You have to figure out, okay, there's this program. How do I get her in it? Who do I need to talk to? When do I need to talk to them? And that's what one of the things that I do with my coaching business is help the parents through these stages, help them think in advance and have that plan ready. So when the time comes, their child doesn't fall into that abyss. These are young men and women who want to work, they want to be part of society, they want to be
Absolutely.
productive. It's challenging and they might need some accommodation and facilitation, but and we also have to work on changing how employers view them, because here's people who want to come to work.
Mhm.
you know
Right.
that's
Right.
a pretty interesting commodity these days, but
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
if we can harness that,
Yep.
it'll help everybody all the way around.
Well, and I
So
think the education system as a whole, when you graduate from high school, they pretty much just prepped you to continue your education.
Mhm.
And even for folks that don't have autism and don't have those things in the way, not everyone wants to go to college. Not
Right.
everyone wants to continue studying. They want to go to work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think the school system as a whole prepares. I mean, even when I was in school, I was prepped to go to college.
Yep.
Or I could have taken the track where I was prepped to be like a secretary.
Right.
Mhm.
And even that, I mean, we took typing and all that kind of stuff. I mean, back in the days with the manual typewriters,
Yeah.
you know, but we really weren't and still aren't trained to get your high school diploma and go out and be a functional adult. And they consider you an adult at that age,
Right. Right.
except for, except for alcohol. But
Right.
Mhm.
so how do you prepare your kids even without the additional challenges of someone with Asperger's
Right.
and those
Right.
things to be ready to be out in the world?
And
You
that's
just don't.
exactly that's the nail on the head right there. I want to make sure that I'm clear on your child has to fit into the world, whether they're neurotypical or on the spectrum. And especially, the young adults on the spectrum, the world's not going to bend to fit them. They have to
Right.
learn how to function and live in the world as it is.
Right.
That I felt was my biggest job
Mhm.
as a parent. Number one, obviously, keep her safe and healthy. Number two, prepare her to be able to thrive and function in the world. It's very different for everybody. Even if you're
Right.
neurotypical, it's different. I have two
Mhm.
brothers. We have very different career paths. And when it comes to, the kids on the spectrum, there's not always as many choices out there. So starting with research is huge. And networking with other parents in the same ballpark. I think uh, when we spoke before, Linda, I think I mentioned that I always say it's like being in a club. When you have a loved one with autism, it's like being in a club. You don't ask to join it, but you're in. And only
Right.
people in the club understand what it's like to be there. But that's a
Mhm.
huge resource of network. And you
Mhm.
can find out so many things. Like somebody will say, oh, my friend so and so knows about that. Let me connect you with them, and they can get
Right.
you that information.
Right.
And that is huge. There are a lot more things out there now than when my daughter was coming up,
Right.
but you have to dig for them, you have to find them, and you have to know how to jump through those hoops
Yeah.
to make it happen for your loved one.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I
Um,
think my niece is maybe a year or two older than your daughter, if I'm getting the timeline right. But you're right. At that point in time, it was tough. And so even when people and when you mention the spectrum, we're talking about autism and Asperger's and stuff like that, correct?
yes,
Yeah.
Asperger's is actually now they have officially made it part of the autism
Yeah.
spectrum.
Right.
And so that includes everyone from nonverbal people to the
Mhm.
higher functioning
Right. Right.
um, Asperger's.
Right, right.
And
And so when folks out there, if you hear um, Susan or us say in the spectrum, that's what we're talking about there. But here's a question for you that some of our listeners may be interested in, especially if they have young children that are having behavior issues.
right.
So what are some of the things you should look for at a young age?
Well, one of the things that we missed with my daughter, again, like I was saying, she wasn't officially diagnosed till she was 10. So I could
Mhm.
then apply that looking back. She tended to walk on her tippy toes all the time. And of course,
Ah,
when you have a little girl walking on her tippy toes, what are people going to think? Oh, well, she wants to be a ballerina.
right.
That was actually part of what was going on with her. And there were other things, like a lot of times people will have uh, sensory issues, like you were
Hmm.
saying, where your niece said, my
Hmm.
skin feels tight. My daughter didn't like the big shower, the water hitting her skin. It
Hmm.
actually physically hurt her, which I understand now. I
Yep.
didn't understand
Hmm.
that then. I knew she didn't like it. And it was loud and all these other things. but you'll see where they don't like loud noises. They don't like crowds in general.
Yeah.
A lot of sensory issues there.
Well, and that's where the typical classroom in schools is horrible for a person who is on the spectrum anywhere. I remember having to pick Krista up, and she's hiding under the desk.
Yep.
I remember my sister having to do the same thing, and it just, the school district is ill prepared to deal. They say they are, but they're not. Number one, they don't have the manpower, and the money that they get from the federal government isn't enough. However, there's a myriad of help out there. And Susan, what is the name of your organization, and how do you work with folks who have children?
My organization is called Bright Path Coaching.
Okay.
And I do advocacy and coaching for the families with kids with autism. I also work with some individual young adults with autism who kind of fell into that after school chasm and now kind of want to find their way out. Okay. And I do one-on-one, and I do that virtually most of the time, but I'm also in the process of starting up groups on Facebook where I'll have a community where people can get together and network. And then I am also putting together some webinars and those things to have a course ready to help walk people through that online, more in a group setting.
Right. And so with when your daughter was growing up, when she was young, did you get she's got ADD, she's got ADHD, she's hyperactive, she's this, that, and the other, correct? And so how did you counter that with the school district?
I kind of learned by the time she was, we're talking about she was 10 years old when she was officially diagnosed. I knew by that time that the school system kind of had their own idea and they didn't want to hear it from me. That's how I felt.
Right.
So I actually went to her neurologist because she has a seizure disorder as well. Autism never lives alone. There's always something else going on. And some people do have ADHD and autism that often correlates together. But what I did was do my research, and then I wrote her neurologist a letter because I didn't want to talk to him about it in front of her because I didn't want her to get upset.
Right.
So I wrote him a letter just saying, hey, I've been doing some research. I've been seeing X, Y, and Z. Do you think it could be Asperger's or autism? And that's when she got the official diagnosis, because he said, well, I don't really like labels. And I said, you know what? If that label is going to help her get what she needs, the support that she needs, the doors that she needs open in order to become functional, then let's do
label.
It.
Yeah. Right.
And again, you are the most important advocate and person in that child's life. And being a healthcare worker, that doesn't mean that we don't care. It doesn't mean teachers don't care. It doesn't mean the therapists in the school don't care. Because I've known a lot of all of those, and they do care. But a lot of times their hands are tied by the procedures and policies that they're bound by their employers. And so it's really important to, again, network. Find out, well, who is the best developmental pediatrician in my area? And who is the best psychiatrist in this area? I know a wonderful person, psychiatrist that was recommended to me in Williamsburg, and he's fantastic with kids with autism. But I found that through word of mouth. So networking. I'm also, part of what I'm doing is creating a resource library, because different states have different things. And I'm creating a resource library that you can have access to in my community to kind of go in and say, okay, get me started. I live in Virginia, or I live in Texas, or wherever. What kind of things are available here? And then start reaching out and getting more in depth with that.
That's huge, because you can never have too many resources.
I
for that.
actually stumbled across one today. We were on our way home from North Carolina, and there was this billboard sign that said something, and I caught it briefly, so I looked it up, and it's actually a 2-year college plan for people with mild intellectual disability that they can go to for free to continue reviewing education and life skills, functional math and different things like that. And it's in the sticks in North Carolina. So
Wow.
you just never know. I mean, a lot of these, and that was with a community college.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important for you to do the research in your local area, because you never know what you're going to find.
Right. And so how's your daughter doing now?
She's doing well. She's doing well. She lives in her own house. And, of course, it doesn't look like I would like it to, but
Never will. Never will, Mom.
No,
yeah.
no,
People with
kids are
autism.
that way.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I said kids' house never look the way you think it should.
Right. Well, and most people with autism there's a difference between the chronological and developmental age, and it's usually about 8 years. So, if you take away 8 years, you're looking at 18, 19 for her. So how would I expect her dorm room to look if she were neurotypical in a college?
Right. Right.
Probably not going to look like good housekeeping nice.
Yeah. Probably tornado hit it.
But she's doing well. She knows how to clean her house. She knows how to do her laundry. She knows how to cook basic meals. She knows how to manage her medication. She knows how to, when, call the medications in when she needs it. And she has support. In Virginia, we have Medicaid waiver systems. I was able to get her one. And so she has case managers and different people checking up with her and supporting her. And, she's doing well.
Good. That is so good to hear.
That's awesome.
And so the encouraging part to this for me, Susan, if folks who are listening are and have family members or friends of family or whatever who are dealing with anybody on the autism spectrum, from
Right.
Not functional at all to high functioning, is that there is hope, right? There is hope, but the number one key that I heard you say is the network, and that's to be involved. And so, folks, you'll find that we have a link to Susan's information in the show notes. You'll be able to reach out to her, and she'll be able to reach back to you. And then, worst case scenario, if you can't get a hold of Susan, you can email us, Linda and I, and we'll pass the information on. Susan, I want to thank you so much for being on today. I love talking about this just because it's close to home. And Linda, do you have any final words?
No, just thank you for sharing your story and sharing what you're doing. I think, the empowered living community has people that may be reaching out to you. And I know we've got Michael that does similar work, Michael Schultz. And I just appreciate you sharing with us and our community.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on. Thanks for taking time out of your busy day.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my passion. It's my heart. It's what lights me up. I could sit and talk about it all day. I know we don't have time, but
yep. All right. Well, Linda, thanks. Susan, once again, thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Reach out with the links that are in the show notes. It's been Sam McEwen, Linda Wilson for Susan Tatem. Thank you so much for joining us today. Live intentionally, be very blessed, friends.